things. You've been in prison. When you were young, you've been in boarding school. How do the two things compare?
There wasn't really that much difference.
I didn't think so.
I mean, yes, I did go to boarding school. And, well, it's only fair to say I was actually expelled from boarding school for refusing to get my hair cut. I was 15 years old when I left. Well, I left when I was 15. And I was supposed to stay until I was 16 to take all these GCE exams or something.
One thing, by the way, I remember, I suppose it was about the end of the 60s, the Publishers of All's magazine, all arrested, sent to prison and released on appeal, but they had very long hair, but they all had prison haircuts. That is to say, they all had short hair. Did they do that to you in prison?
No.
So in that respect, the prison was more liberal than boarding school?
Yes, in some respects, yeah.
All right. One thing I meant to mention earlier. I want to get on to what the newspaper said about you, but one thing they said actually, well, before you got to prison, before you were put on, they accused you of sacrificing cats. Now, two things. One is, I think, probably everybody knows in Wicca, blood sacrifice is totally against the rules. But in any case, they try to charge you all kinds of things, everything from desecrating a corpse to stealing bed linen, but they never accused you of sacrificing a cat.
No, they didn't, simply because it never happened.
Well, why did they think it had happened, I mean, apart from just the imagination of newspaper reporting?
It wasn't so much the imagination. It was based on a sort of a misunderstanding of a true story.
Yeah.
The pop singer, blues singer, Long John Baldry, who died a few years back, and also lived in Montrell Hill.
Yeah.
We were performing ceremonies in Highgate Woods, which is just over the road from where I live, by night.
Yeah.
The reason ceremonies are conducted, they're all Wiccan ceremonies, by night is obviously because Wicca is a religion based on the lunar cycle, and it gives great importance to the power and the cycles of the moon. And also obviously in the summer it's much easier to perform such rituals. With these rituals spread locally and with rumours going all around, the newspapers picking up. Long John Baldry actually went to the, I think it was the Daily Express, which certainly the Haunted Journal, because his pet cat, Stoopsy, that's his name, had gone missing. And Baldry assumed the evil witches, led by David Farrant, had used his cat in a sacrifice. The papers phoned me up, and I said, look, if he doesn't stop making all these accusations against me, I said, I will sacrifice his goats, because Long John Baldry used to walk pet goats in Highgate Wood on the chain. I would have never sacrificed his goat. The point is, I didn't sacrifice his cat. And in 1979, I had a libel action against the Daily Express over the way accusations they'd made during my 1974 trial. They called Long John Baldry as a prosecution witness. Well, as it was a libel case, he was a defence witness. Yes. And I'd already heard rumours before this, that his cat had returned unharmed. And I didn't have power, so I examined him myself, and I asked him in the court, Mr. Baldry, is there any truth in the story, as I have heard, that your cat returned completely unharmed a couple of weeks after you told the papers that I had sacrificed it? And he said, yes, the cat did come back unharmed. My immediate question to him in court was, why did you not get onto the papers, the newspapers, Why do you not say, well, my cat's returned, so David Farrant could not have sacrificed it? He said, oh, I didn't think that was important. I was so pleased to have the cat back. I just thought the story was over and finished. So that's how that story got out.
All right.
Got around, I should say.
All right, I mean, another one that was in the Sunday People, I think, it said, David Farrant is accustomed to pray naked to the stars, and this has so terrified his axe-murderer cellmate that the cellmate is asked to be put in solitary confinement rather than have to.
Well, it's true and it's not true. That's a bit of an exaggeration. It is true. I mean, the bit that's not true is about praying naked to the stars. It is true that I was continuing to practice Wicca as far as I was able to in the prison. There was a man in the cell, and he was in prison. I won't actually name him, but if anybody wants to ask me in private, I will. He was in prison for murdering his wife with an axe. He was a black guy, and the reason he killed her, he was found guilty of manslaughter. I wasn't present at his trial. I don't know what happened, but I do know this much. He killed her because he thought she was a witch.
So that was held to be only manslaughter, not murder?
Yes, on the grounds as a result of his mitigation.
So
and I ended up with this axe-murderer and one other person called Michael Ainsworth in the same cell as this axe-murderer.
So presumably somebody in the prison system had a sort of twisted sense of humour.
Well, exactly, yeah. But we were practicing occult, I won't call them rituals. We had certain implements in there that we could get hold of. I did have a blanket which I was sort of using as a robe. We did manage to get hold of chalk, and we could actually make candles out of the hospital, out of the prison battle rather. It was very easy to do that. And so we had the basics to perform, shall we say, seances. Now this guy, this axe-murderer in the cell would have nothing to do with them, because we used to do them at night. No, not every night, but we used to conduct these things regularly. And one day he disappeared from the cell. Apparently gone to the prison governor, he was petrified. And the other man apparently, the guy I just called Michael, I feel that one of those seances worked out wrong, because he started having nightmares. I think that something broke through the circle and took temporary possession of him. I didn't know this at the time, but I found out through one of the prison trustees, the orderlies, that the prison authorities, rather, this person had gone to the prison chaplain, who was a C of E. He'd gone to the governor had asked permission from the Home Office, being granted, and they called in the exorcist, Christopher Neil Smith.
Right, yeah. Just incidentally, I think it was just about then that Neil Smith produced a book in which he said that in the previous 4 years he performed 2,000 exorcisms, which is 500 a year, which is nearly 2 a day. Being a busy bee.
Well, he might have been busy. He really believed that some people were possessed by the devil, and he had a strange way of doing it. He used to put his hands on their head and nearly shake their heads off. And I learned all this because there was a prison trustee in the prison chapel when this executed. There was the governor, Christopher Neil Smith, who brought somebody with him. The prisoner called Michael Ainsworth, who was being exorcised, and he put his hands on Michael Ainsworth's head, shaking it violently. He was kneeling in front of the altar, and he was saying, "Drive out the evil powers of David Farrant." That actually happened. So it just shows you that persecution towards Wicca hasn't really changed since the barbaric ages.
Yeah. Right. Briefly, I think you eventually went on hunger strike.
I went on hunger strike about 4 months before the end of my sentence in London. No, I'm sorry, it was about 6 months before the end of it. Because I was so fed up of my treatment in prison. I got on perfectly well with all the other prisoners, believe it or not. In fact, they often used to come to me for advice. Will you help me with my girlfriend? Could be having an affair with somebody, or I haven't heard from this person for a long time, or could you tell my fortune? All this sort of thing. You know, a lot of it was just down to boredom, but this interest was there. And, well, that's mainly it.
Well, I just would say you went on hunger strike. Well, when you told me...
Look, I'm not avoiding it. It was the fact the police were stopping my letters.
Yeah.
They were stopping all my moves to prove my innocence in prison. And I mean, they even stopped letters to my solicitor. Cutting it short, jumping ahead of hunger strike, I took my case to the European Commission of Human Rights then, and it wasn't actually heard till I was released from prison a few years later, but it came before the Commission, and I won. I believe it was, they ruled the Home Office had illegally stopped 17 out of 18 of my letters. And it was because of me mainly that the prison rules were changed. They had to change the prison rules as a result of the Commission's ruling. So from that date, prisoners were allowed to write letters. That's beside the point. Yes, I did go on hunger strike. I went without food for 7.5 weeks. And
I think you must have ruined your health by then.
well, I did. I was about 11 stone. And I've never regained that weight properly. When I came out of prison, I think I was 7.5 stone. And after a couple of years, I went back up to about 9, I think, which I still am now, but I never put those extra 2 stones back on as a result of that hunger strike. And I think they knew I wasn't going to give in. And so they gave me parole. They probably thought, well, it was certainly the end of the sentence. They don't want the embarrassment of having me dying on them. You better have to explain why I was in hunger strike.
Okay, let's look brighter. You released summer of '76, which, for those who are old enough to remember it, was one of the hottest was about the hottest summer in living memory.
Yeah, it's true.
What we said, you saying here is there was plenty of cold beer on the train.
The first thing I did was when I got on the train to London from Lowestoft, from London, they gave you, obviously they gave you a train ticket, excuse me, and one of the prison officers took me to the station. It wasn't a bad guy actually, it was one of the nicer ones. He said, just make sure that's a one-way ticket. The first thing I did on the train was to buy a pint of lager. I didn't care about food anymore. Yes, that was my first pint of lager for, well, over 2.5 years.
Right. Alright, and then when you're back in London and parole, you had to stay somewhere in specific?
I actually found a flat in Highgate eventually.
Right, I mean, I wonder what happened. I mean, I wouldn't really trying to prison your ordinary home, something happens. What happens to your possessions that